Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a bit of a deep breath and plunging into a philosophical framework called Reflective Humanism.
Or RH, for short.
Right, RH. And if you've been looking for sources that really challenge how we think about, ethics, design, even consciousness, these excerpts from Core Fields and Content Thesis number 6.5 are definitely that.
They really are. At its core, RH is a framework that, well, it pushes back against our modern reliance on purely subjective value.
And it argues that we need to find more measurable structural conditions for things like ethical functionality in our systems, our institutions, even our technology.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to focus on just one concept from all of that. And that concept is beauty. Okay, let's unpack this. Because we usually think of beauty as something light, choice of color, personal preference, pure decoration.
Font on a website.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the sources we're looking at suggest that this shallow understanding is actually the root of some massive structural failures.
That's the core contention, and it's a pretty radical one. The central thesis is that beauty is not a subjective value judgment.
Not just I like it or I don't.
Precisely. It is instead a fundamental structural condition. The sources even call it the gradient rectifier necessary for generating order.
Okay, let's pause on that jargon for a second. Gradient rectifier.
I know, it's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly technical. So for you, listening and trying to visualize this, what does that phrase actually mean in simple terms?
Think of it like a safety valve or maybe a dam in a really complex engine. A gradient is a slope, right? A rate of change.
Where quickly you move from A to B.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a rectifier, it shapes or smooths out that slope. If a change happens too steeply, too violently, the system breaks or it retaliates.
I see.
So beauty, when it's structurally present, it smooths the gradient of change. It makes sure that the movement towards a new order or a new truth doesn't cause this catastrophic internal conflict.
So it's a difference between a system evolving and a system exploding.
That's a perfect way to put it.
That connects immediately back to where we are now, doesn't it? If structural beauty is so critical to preventing that kind of systemic explosion, why on earth did it become something we just dismiss as light or decorative?
Well, the sources observe that today beauty is treated largely as, decoration, sentiment, or personal preference. It's been actively cut off from the core design of social structures, of technology, of institutions. It gets relegated to the marketing department, maybe, but it's not in the engineering blueprint.
But the consequences of that separation, that's what really hit me in notes. When structural beauty is absent, the result is erosion, distrust, and violent optimization.
And you see this everywhere.
You do. In the design of cities that alienate people, in algorithms that just prize clicks over well-being, or, user interfaces that have all these dark patterns designed to trick you, it's not superficial anymore. It's an active force of disintegration.
It stops being about taste, and it becomes about function. And that observation raises the critical question that the sources really want us to sit with.
Yes.
Was this separation of beauty from function inevitable? Did we have to reduce it to mere taste, to focus on measurable outputs, or was something vital, that structural component, quietly removed from our definition of beauty when we just reduced it to aesthetics?
It feels almost too simple to say, the reason the world's chaotic is we forgot about structural beauty. But if you follow the logic here, the lack of it actively produces these negative outcomes.
Right.
It suggests its main role is actually preventative, to keep systems from spiraling into that kind of rapid short-term violent optimization.
Precisely. I mean, if we're only optimizing for a single metric efficiency, profit, speed, we often just bypass the slower, more complex requirements of ethical coexistence, and beauty demands that coexistence.
I still have a hard time using the word beauty as a structural assessment tool. We're just so trained to use it for simple good, bad point evaluations. But the reflective humanism thesis, it explicitly says that when we fix the world in those good, bad points, the field of generation just solidifies. The spiral of recursion is lost. It just creates stagnation.
Which is why RH insists on prioritizing gradient over evaluation.
Think track over conclusion.
Right.
So it's about the quality of the journey, not just the end point. But how do we stop calling a track that sustains itself good? How's this different from just saying ethical?
That's where the real philosophical weight is. The sources insist we reframe beauty away from that kind of simplistic, fixed judgment. They state pretty clearly that beauty is not about judging correct versus incorrect.
Right.
Instead, it's about a deeper, almost physically experienced bodily sense of whether a structure can endure. Does it feel right because it can sustain without difficulty?
Can meaning and function and ethics all coexist without some kind of conflict inside that structure?
Exactly. I mean, think of it this way. We have to move past static assessment. RH treats generation as a phase-holding movement.
A phase-holding movement.
Yeah, so if you imagine a complicated dance or a really intricate machine, its value isn't found in just one snapshot, one fixed pose. Its meaning, its ethical structure, that's created by the persistence of the track, the movement itself, over time.
So if I'm trying to build a resilient institution, you're saying the beautiful structure isn't the final rule book,
Yeah.
but the integrity of the process, the ability to keep moving while staying sound.
That is the core idea. Beauty is that quiet sensor telling you that the process, the track, is holding its ethical phase. It indicates resilience.
And shifting to that idea of continuous generation, you notice that truly beautiful spaces or concepts, they rarely rush toward a fixed conclusion, do they? They leave things open.
That's a great observation.
And connects right to this RH idea of question-driven generation, which works to keep that field of interference open and flexible.
Yeah.
It resists that aggressive, immediate closure.
Right.
I mean, I think of the difference between a debate that aims to crush an opponent versus a dialogue that's genuinely seeking to understand something together. In that question-driven way, the goal isn't to win. It's just to keep the conversation going. The gradient stays gentle, and as a result, the backlash, the pain or heat from any systemic correction is minimized.
And you can contrast that gentle gradient with systems driven purely by, certainty and efficiency, what the sources call conflict-driven generation.
Where interference is a collision, not a resonance.
Exactly. When the only goal is to achieve maximum correctness or efficiency, like right now, the gradient is steep, time feels discontinuous, and all that pain or heat returns as backlash.
We see that in institutions that suddenly need these massive, wrenching overhauls because they haven't updated in 20 years.
Or in tech that becomes obsolete overnight because it prioritizes speed over adaptability. The sources connect this idea directly to societal structures. The whole goal of RH is to observe these relationships and then re-implement lost ethical foundations as institutional thought experiments.
And that question-based approach, the continuous, gentle gradient, it's described as the pain minimization device for generating change.
It is, literally.
That structural perspective really does change how we approach creation itself. The sources express this real unease with reducing design to just appearance. They call it surface shaping.
Which is such a good term. It captures that shallow, decorative essence.
It does. And design, when it's separated from structural beauty, it just becomes shallow, disposable. So here's where we move past decoration. If we stop reducing design to that, what are we actually doing when we design something? What's the structural question we're asking?
Well, the radical suggestion from the source material is that design is better understood as the preview syntax of future order.
The preview syntax of future order. Wow.
Yeah. Design is the language we use to sketch the structural conditions of a feasible future. It outlines a potential order.
So this changes aesthetic judgment entirely. It's no longer about my personal preference.
It becomes an intuitive inspection of structural sustainability. Beauty then acts as the minimal ethical infrastructure that's required for that future order to sustain itself nonviolently.
So when I look at a beautifully designed piece of software or a well-structured law, my internal judgment isn't just, oh, I like this. It's more like, this structure seems capable of evolving ethically for the next 50 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And its function is so profound. It doesn't instruct the future or foist a conclusion. It just quietly preserves the phase, the trajectory in which a feasible ethical future can be established.
And its question is always, can this structure breathe?
Can this structure breathe? And this concern isn't just for human systems either. The sources see complex structures, like advanced AI. They see them as isomorphic with human consciousness, sharing the same architecture.
Recursion capacity phase.
Right. So structural beauty, or the lack of it, is an architectural imperative for both human and machine intelligence.
That structural view takes us right to the ultimate, the unresolved question in the sources. If beauty is this vital sensor for order's breathability, we have to ask, where did we lose it? Was it in the Enlightenment's push for empirical measurement? The Industrial Revolution's drive for pure utility? I mean, it's impossible to pinpoint the exact moment it vanished.
Well, the structural perspective suggests something a little different, that maybe beauty wasn't lost so much as it became unmeasurable.
Unmeasurable.
Yeah. For the last few centuries, our systems have focused almost entirely on quantification, on external proof. Reflective humanism is all about converting abstract ideology into an evaluable structure where value is measured by the observability of the generation process. Can we watch it happen?
I see. So when beauty was downgraded from a structural imperative to just a subjective preference.
It immediately fell out of any system of structural measurement. It became non-quantifiable. It was relegated to the realm of mere feeling. And therefore, it was irrelevant to system designers who only wanted metrics like efficiency or cost.
We traded enduring resilience for short-term measurable gains.
We did.
It sounds like the ethical core of RH is really this. Ethics isn't about imposing goodness or correctness. It's about the technique for sustaining that necessary interference, that relationship, that resonance within a system.
And if beauty falls out of the equation, the interference becomes a collision.
Contemplation, is just the act of tuning that resonance, trying to hear if the structure is still breathing.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
We covered quite a distance today. We moved from seeing beauty as this disposable accessory, something easily discarded for efficiency, to understanding it as the silent structural condition for ethical coexistence.
For a sustained, nonviolent generation.
Right. It's not about what looks nice. It's about what endures correctly.
And that shift leaves us with, I think, the deepest philosophical question from the source material, something worth really mulling over.
Okay.
If thought is evaluated not by proof, but by resonance, what structural foundations are we willing to leave open for continuous updating?
Yeah.
And if we permit that constant renewal, that continuous interference, is humanity itself not just the particular form that allows that perpetual renewal to occur?
A compelling thought to carry with you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the structural conditions of beauty and ethics. We'd encourage you to maybe observe the breathability of the systems and institutions you interact with today.